just a quick recap here. Joe is working through figuring out how to get to work on time, and we're using the A3 report. Joe's come up with a containment to address being 15 minutes late, and he's got a problem statement. He knows his gap is 15 minutes, and his goal is to reduce that, and he's put all of that into the A3 problem-solving report. So we're in the C section of the A3 problem-solving report, and we're on step 2. And step 2 is now going to be really getting deeper into the current state, understanding the current situation, such that we can kind of narrow where we want to go do our root cause analysis and then eventually our problem solving. The first step that we're going to do inside of this current situation understanding is process observation, simple process observation. Remember, one of the always is we always want to have our own facts that we're going to gather ourselves. So we got to go out to the Gemba. If you haven't heard of the Gemba, it is where the work occurs. It's a Japanese term, and they talk about it a lot because of the great importance that's placed on getting into the weeds, really understanding what's going on. If this is a call center, I need to sit next to a call center agent. If this is a manufacturing operation, I need to go walk the manufacturing floor, understand what's going on. If this is a order entry process, I need to do a screen sharing and watch somebody put information in. And when I'm watching, I'm really just observing quietly, right? Silently, maybe taking some notes, but trying to be as unobtrusive as possible, all right? And then at that point, I might follow up and ask some questions. But this is going to give me a lot of credibility when I start talking about how we're seeing the problem, because I really got into the weeds and understood how the work is happening and how the work is being done. Okay. From there, the deeper I want to go, and the more I want to utilize some techniques in exploring, visualizing, and helping to communicate what I'm seeing, with that same purpose of trying to narrow into maybe 1 or 2 areas that we're going to focus on our A3 report, our A3 problem solving, okay? And so there's various tools that we can use. We're going to actually touch on each one of these here. There's some similarities between them, but each does something slightly different and useful. This is where, as a white belt, you probably don't have a great deal of experience or knowledge of these. And we're not intending this short tutorial to make you an expert in, frankly, any of them. This is why we have our coaches as part of the CI Mastermind program. So I highly recommend, taking what you learn from this and then asking some good questions to your coach to figure out which one you use. And of course, your coach is going to give you feedback on how you apply it. All right. So we'll just walk through each one of these and we'll start with SIPOC. So SIPOC stands for Supplier, Input, Process, Output, and Customer. The idea is that every process is a set of steps, right? And those steps produce an output. Those steps require an input. And inputs are provided to us by suppliers, and outputs are provided to us, outputs are provided to customers. All right. So again, if we're in the call center, we have a process where maybe we're picking up the phone, we're answering some questions, we're providing an answer. The answer is the output of that process. The activities needed to get to that answer are the process steps. The information coming from the customer, the person on the phone calling in, those are the inputs, right? And so that helps us to understand or break down what can be a fairly complicated process into a set of areas that might be causing our problem. If it's a manufacturing process, I have raw inputs from a supplier. Those inputs are going to be processed through a number of steps, maybe some kind of milling, maybe an assembly process. And then there's going to be an output at the end, and that output goes to my customer. Depending on the type of problems I have with those outputs, I can look upstream in my process steps, in my inputs to my suppliers, and understand how those could be contributing to the problem that I'm seeing, all right? Here's a visual of the SIPOC hiring process. The hiring process, what does it produce? It gives me a hiring decision. It gives me an offer. It gives me a start date. There may be some other things, But again, we just want to try and simplify it to understand and visualize. There's a series of steps that are needed. We have to create a request. We have to do an interview. We have to select candidates. We got to get a candidate decision, right? All of that stuff is going to help us produce the output, which is going to go to those customers, which are a hiring manager and a resource. Of course, I can't do any of those process steps without a job description, a position request, an offer letter. And each one of those inputs has a different supplier. The hiring manager supplies certain things, the human resources person provides certain things, and the candidate provides certain things. But this gives us a single visual on a sheet of paper, maybe something we do as a collaborative activity, so everyone has a good understanding of the inputs and outputs of the process, and we can go start doing our problem solving. The next tool we'll talk about is process maps. In an A3, we're not looking for a very complex process maps. If you're somebody who has a lot of experience process mapping and you can do functional swim lanes and you can do decision nodes and you know all the different shapes for data and information, that's not what we're looking for in an A3. In an A3, typically these are simpler problems and we want to just look for basic things. So in the case of Joe's drive to work, he's getting up, he's brushing his teeth, he's taking a shower, shaving, you can see all the way through. So we visualized those activities that are kind of hard to see, right? So that they can be explained to other people. And additionally valuable, we can go look at that process and we go, where's the defect being found? Oh, at arrival, or maybe even at the meeting that I'm late to. Where is the defect being caused? Well, that takes a little bit of work, but initially Joe might have a instinct to say, I think it's my drive to work that's changed. Okay, great. Let's go investigate drive to work. So now we've scoped down and we can easily explain to people why we scoped down to the drive to work. The next tool is cause and effect diagrams. I love this tool. It is a very good collaborative tool, so I would recommend that you always have other people involved in cause and effect diagrams. And the reason I love it is it gives everybody a chance to get their view out on where the problem is occurring. Too often I find in problem solving, we focus in an area, but not everybody's on board and focusing in that area. Oh, we're going to look at the receiving dock, but somebody feels like it's the put away and storage activity that's the problem, right? And so this gives the opportunity for everyone to get their view on where the problem might be coming from, the cause, so that they're heard, right? And we can make some decisions on why we focus on one area versus another. So this is a simple cause and effect relationship. In this case, our effect is Joe being late to work, and we're going to look through a number of high-level causes. We're not drilling down like we do in a 5 why. We're keeping it at the top level, and we're looking through some basic categories: people, environment, measurement, method, material, machine, or equipment. Any one of those areas can be a top category of what's causing our problem. We can define different categories, but those are really powerful because they pretty much encompass most of what we find when we're going about solving a problem. If we look at Joe's specific issue of being late to work, we can go in an environment and go, well, you know, have we had maybe a month here where we've had a lot of snow maybe, and Joe's just late to work because he keeps getting stuck in snow, big snow weather? Is it maybe something about the alarm clock that Joe's using and the clock is running slow? That's more of a measurement type issue. Is Joe remembering to set the alarm clock at night? Is he forgetting? That's a method issue. So we can brainstorm in each one of these big categories and come up with where we think this problem that Joe's experience is coming from. Okay. So those tools are all very qualitative in nature and very based on expert knowledge. Pareto charts moves us to collecting data, basic data, and grouping that data into where we're seeing, organizing that data into where we're seeing the problem. And it utilizes the 80-20 rule. We're looking for that 80% of issues that are creating, the biggest pain for Joe, right? So we're looking for that big chunk of issues. And so what a Pareto chart does is it simply creates some categories. In this case, we're looking at drive, parking, dress, eating, and we're saying, okay, how much is each one of these making us late? And then we're sorting them from the most late to the least, and we're going to look at 80%, right? And so I think in this case, we're saying drive, parking, and dress looks like about the 80% point, and drive really being the massive piece of that. So again, this uses now some actual data versus maybe subject matter expert opinion to focus on, hey, we need to go take a look at drive. The next tool is stratification. And here we're arranging or classifying data into different groups or categories and trying to look at which groups tell us the most, which groups really provide us some insights into what could be causing the problem. In the case here that you're seeing on the screen, we're looking at different people, Joe, Bob, Sarah, Pete, okay? And each one of them, how late are they on average, maybe over the last month or last 3 months, something like that. And we can see, oh, Joe is really struggling where Sarah's doing quite well. Let's talk to Sarah. Maybe Sarah lives in the same neighborhood. What is Sarah doing differently from Joe? Potentially we can get some techniques and ideas from Sarah, but clearly we want to focus on what's Joe doing, right? And compare or contrast to some of those areas of the stratification. Run charts is next. So we're in Pareto charts and in stratification, we're creating some categorical groupings, people or defects or process steps. In run charts, we're looking at time and we're saying what's changing over time. And time can tell us a lot, right? If we see trends up, trends down, if we see certain points in time where we're having problems, maybe Joe was just having issues in July and not so much in June or not so much in August, right? So we might want to ask, well, what were the differences in those times? So time is a great factor for us to look at, and run charts help us to see the change in that factor so that we can go then and ask questions, or again, zero in on the point in time when Joe is having the most trouble. And the last tool we're going to look at is called the tree diagram. A tree diagram, again, uses some groupings and it uses data to help explore or narrow where is the real problem coming from. And what it's doing differently than the other tools is it's drilling down, right? So we're looking deeper and deeper to see, to try and find kind of that one area that's having the biggest issue. So we've got a 15-minute gap here, and that 15-minute gap can be broken into a 3-minute gap doing the bathroom activities, a 10-minute gap in commute, a 2-minute gap in breakfast. And so we go, oh my gosh, there's a 10-minute gap in commute. That's clearly the biggest opportunity. Let's go look there. Let's go look a little deeper. There's driving and there's parking. Well, driving's taking 8 minutes longer than it was before. If I just focus there, I could potentially reduce more than 50% of my total gap. Now, I also like to look at these too and go, yeah, but what might be the easiest thing to fix as well? Like if I put my clothes out the night before, I might be able to shave a minute and a half off of my getting dressed. And that potentially is an easy way for me to make up some time. Again, I want my 15 minutes back, right? Because I need to, help my daughter study for that history test, or Joe does anyways. So that's the idea here, is I'm trying to find those places where I can go make some gain on the target, right? Make some reduction of the problem so that I can get to, really focusing on the solution. So sure enough, the tree diagram really was helpful. And so Joe goes and focuses on the tree diagram, and then he adds that to the A3 report. So in the A3 report, we can now start seeing that story build from a containment action to a problem statement and a gap to what do we think we should focus on to close that gap. All right, we're going to leave it there. And then in the next module of this tutorial, we'll go through step 3 and step 4 of the C in A3. Thank you.